Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Jordan, and welcome to Menopausitive,
I got a good feeling.
where we take a refreshingly positive approach to navigating menopause. If you're looking for practical tips, expert advice, and honest conversations, think of this as your personal pick and mix for how to optimize your body. Although we can't prevent menopause, we can redefine it. And that journey starts now. You know that phrase, like attracts like? There's actual science behind it. Our brains are wired to look for things that feel familiar. It's how we build friendships, communities, even careers. But there's something electric about being around people who see the world differently, who step outside the traditional script. That's how I feel after spending time with one of my oldest friends, Cheryl. While I built a career in public relations, working with brands and CEOs and a few celebrities, Cheryl went into sustainability long before sustainability was fashionable. She was surrounded by people working at the World Economic Forum and UNICEF. In my world, I would joke, it's PR, not ER. We're not saving lives here, people. In her world, they actually were saving lives. There were people designing systems to literally save the planet. Every time we meet, I come away a little more conscious. I started asking where my food comes from. I stopped throwing out half-drunk glasses of water. And most recently, Cheryl introduced me to, wait for it, regenerative gardening. Okay, now stay with me, everybody. Regenerative gardening is about healing the soil. Instead of taking from it and completely depleting it, you leave it to rest so that over time, the land heals. It can feed itself. It'll become richer, more alive, which basically means that you need less chemicals and less fertilizer. It's also why, that epic music festival, Glastonbury, takes what they call fallow years. They restore the land, enrich its natural ecosystem. And like I said, it means that you need less chemicals and less fertilizer. So here's the thing I want you to consider. What if this perimenopausal and menopausal transition wasn't a crisis to manage, but an invitation to regenerate? Most of us, especially women, have spent years focused on output over our own nourishment. We perform, we provide, we push, and then we patch ourselves up with caffeine, sugar, ibuprofen, Tylenol, you name it. This brings me to regenerative health. Have you heard this term? It's the art and science of creating the right conditions for your body to heal itself, to strengthen, and to thrive. So just like Glastonbury restoring the soil, we restore ourselves, cell by cell, breath by breath, practice by practice. So today, we're exploring 2 quiet revolutions in the regenerative health space that can help prepare and support women through the menopause transition. PEMF therapy, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, and perhaps the more familiar red light therapy. These aren't wellness fads. They're tools backed by science for women like us, women who want to invest in resilience, radiance, and longevity. To help us understand it better, I've invited my new friend, Andy Smith, to join us. Andy is the founder and CEO of New Med Limited. Over 10 years ago, during a business trip to Australia, Andy developed an unbearable pain in his stomach during his return flight to the UK. After a series of visits to emergency rooms and range of doctors and specialists, he learned he'd developed a really serious infection that by that time was on the verge of sepsis. His healing journey started with surgery and prescriptions for pills and antibiotics, and it finished with PEMF therapy as he looked for ways to recover faster and heal his body naturally. It had such a profound impact on him. He created the company Cellular and is passionate about helping others learn about, experience, and consider the benefits of PEMF and red light therapy as part of their holistic health and well-being journey. Andy, welcome to Menopausitive. Oh my God, that was a mouthful. Now, I know you spend a lot of time with biohackers and performance athletes like Ben Greenfield and whatnot. I saw Orlando Bloom and Professor Green, are into all of this. PEMF, are we calling it PEMF or is it PEMF or what's the best way to say this?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got into the habit of calling it PEMF because I've been doing it for a long time now, and it was kind of the word at the time, but a lot of people are now calling it PEMF. It's just a much easier mouthful.
I think it's going to be easier for me to get my mouth around. Okay, so PEMF started with elite athletes, and now it's showing up in women's wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever expect, this recovery tech of Olympians and pro athletes would be used for perimenopause?
It all comes down to the basic principles. So it's all about creating an environment to heal and negating around all our external factors that are happening in the world we live in. So, this is why PEMF, people ask me often, what does it help for? And they will send me a list of their conditions and they say, I've got this condition. Can it help for this? And a lot of the time, it's all about bringing it back to our ancestral living. So I always tell people that magnetism is an essential element. So is light. If you take somebody away from the natural magnetism from the earth, eventually they will die. They will pass away because they need that magnetism for health. NASA was one of the key influential kind of driving factors for PEMF and human use, because PEMF goes back all the way to Nikola Tesla when they started looking at electromagnetic fields. But what NASA was finding was that they would take astronauts up into space, they'd stay up there for a long time, and they would come down with bone issues, so osteoporosis as we know it. And a lot of that was down to the fact that they've been taking away from this natural magnetic field that you get from the earth. So you may have heard of grounding. A lot of people, biohackers especially.
Yes, we love hugging trees.
That's it. Those crazy biohackers. At the end of the day, biohacking is getting a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but it really is just about creating some small health hacks in your life that is going to prevent issues later down the line. One of those is taking your shoes off. If you take your shoes off, you can ground. And if you do that outside, that's going to help connecting you back to the Earth's natural magnetic field. That's what the main principle is and what it's there for.
And that's why not women, but everybody, why people enjoy or they find just being in nature, they go, God, that felt good when they went away for a weekend or something and into the countryside. Or why do I feel so good when I'm outside, when I go for a walk and then I come back? Because there is this natural energy or magnetism that's happening. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not woo-woo. You take your shoes off, you walk in the grass and people think, that's those guys.
Yeah, who's that crazy person?
Yeah. What are they doing?
Yeah, I think Ben Greenfield said that he took his shoes off in airports. Now, that was a little bit much. I thought that was pushing it a bit too far.
Yeah, and the problem is we are kind of shielded from the natural magnetic field from the way we live. So we're sitting in a studio right now. We are protected from the Earth's natural magnetic field because of the buildings we're in. Lots of metal structures, all that sort of thing. It's conducting all of those magnetic fields as well as the shoes we're wearing. So, we're wearing shoes that are all conductive material. So it's not going to allow us to connect back to the Earth's natural magnetic field. We drive around in metal cars, all these different things. So we are pulled away from the magnetic field and from light. Same thing. We're kind of involved in all this unnatural light every single day. So we are looking at computer screens full of blue lights. We watch TV. We're looking at our phone screens. We're really disrupting what we were put on this earth to do. So be connected to nature, be connected to the earth's magnetic field, see natural light. So we don't really, how often do you now go outside when the sun rises, enjoy that first light, connect yourself back to the magnetic field? It just doesn't happen these days. Even myself, who consider myself a bit of a biohacker, a bit of a health freak, even I still don't get outside and do that in the mornings. So we need to find tech that can help replace those.
My husband and I, speaking of that, a year ago started doing sky before screen.
Mm-hmm.
So when we wake up in the morning, we even looking out a window, or he gets out of the house right away. But they say if you can look at the sky, even just for a few minutes before we even pick up our phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought sky before screen was a nice little rule of thumb.
It's a great idea. And just a simple health hack that you can do is leave the curtains open. Just always leave them open.
Even when you go to sleep?
Even when you go to sleep.
Oh, God, you get really dark, Andy. I live in London. I mean, you live in the countryside. It's dark. Yeah, I grew up in the country. It was
different.
very dark. Yeah, with just the stars in the sky. But I think in London with the street lights, I can't help with that. Okay, I want to take a few steps back here because you've already started talking about magnetism and magnets and earth magnet, and I want to make sure everybody's tracking. So let's start at the beginning. What is PEMF therapy?
Yeah.
And why are our cells obsessed with it?
It stands for pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. The basic principles of PEMF is that we are putting some copper coils into either a mat or a device, and we put a small charge into the copper coil, and it creates a magnetic field. We can then pulse it at certain rates so that we have higher and lower frequencies. And the reason we do that is so that we are, again, looking at our circadian rhythm. So we are replicating the brain states throughout the day.
And the high frequency gets us up and out of bed and gets us going. And the lower frequency prepares us for sleep.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Exactly. So we want to replicate the brain states. So you've got delta throughout sleep, which is the lowest frequency. You've then got theta, which is your meditative ones. And then you've got alpha, which is kind of in the evening when you're winding down. And then you've got your beta state, which is alertness throughout the day, which is where we want to kind of be in if we want to be doing podcasts like this, or if we want to be working and, we want to be switched on. So we want to make sure we're in the right brain states at the right time of day. These devices create a magnetic field, essentially. So if you have a picture of the Earth and you've ever seen the magnetic field that goes from the North Pole round to the South Pole, that's basically what a PEMF device is. It replicates the Earth's natural magnetic field. And we apply ourselves, we lay on a mat, we sit on a device, or however we want to apply it. We'll come to that in this podcast. And it works on the body in a cellular level. So the good thing about PEMF therapy is it passes straight through the body. So it often gets confused because we're talking about PEMF, and EMF has quite a negative connotation.
Yes.
So it's one of the first things that people sort of say to us, I've heard EMF, electromagnetic fields are bad. They are bad at high frequencies, super, super high frequencies. So let me give you an example of a PEMF mat would generally run between 1 and 30 hertz, or 1 and 100 hertz is the kind of general range which most PEMF mats run in. The Earth's natural magnetic field runs on a frequency of 7.8, which is the Schumann resonance. So if you think 1 to 30 hertz, the 8 hertz is kind of in the middle there, and it's seen as a very natural frequency.
That is the Earth's frequency, around 7.88, you said, right?
Yes, exactly that. So if you're grounding, that's what frequency you're being exposed
so that's
to.
the frequency when we have our bare feet and we're standing in the grass.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right. And then a mat, though, has this range between 1 and 100.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's different ranges, but that's what you're referring to right now.
Yeah. When we talk about EMFs and we talk about super high frequency, we're talking about our mobile phones, 5G. So we've just driven into the world of 5G, so we can get that YouTube video super quick now, which is great. But 5G is equivalent to 5 gigahertz, which I think is either 60 million or 6 million hertz. So you think of 7.8 hertz compared to 6 million, 60 million hertz. These frequencies are very different. They're not natural, and they're known as non-ionizing. So they are absorbed by the body. So low frequencies pass through the body. High frequencies, super high frequencies, are absorbed by the body. And there's a good note that a lot of people can kind of relate to is when you put your phone up against your ear and you talk for an hour and you're speaking to someone. When you move your phone away, it's very hot. And red.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is mainly caused by the high frequencies. So it's almost like holding a microwave against your head for, an hour, which isn't great.
I did read that we should never hold the phone to our ear. We should be using speakerphone.
Yeah.
Or at least our ear.
A lot of people are.
Okay?
Yeah, a lot of people are now. But then people think the alternative could be a Bluetooth headset or something like that. Bluetooth also runs very, very high frequencies. So again, it's something that we tend to avoid if we want to be exposing ourselves to more natural frequencies.
Okay, so we have aligned with, there's the Earth's magnetic field. This is a natural thing that's happening, why we feel good when we put our bare feet on the ground or we're out in nature. And then the PEMF mats can mimic that and also dial up and dial down to, again, mimic natural states in our body. Like you said, morning, evening, nighttime.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I tracking?
Yes. So we're talking about our circadian rhythm here, and that's something that a lot of people forget to prioritize in their health.
And it's getting a lot of PR right now, the circadian rhythm. We had a nutritionist on that talked about, the two messages that your body really gets is, sunlight or, morning light, nighttime, and food. So she was talking about waking and sleeping at the same time and eating meals at the same time and the benefits of that. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly that. So circadian rhythm is so important. And, at the end of the day, because we all go back to the principles of we want to sleep better. We want to make sure we're alert in the morning. We want to have energy throughout the day. And then we want to recharge throughout the night. If we're struggling to do that with our current routines, this is where tech like this comes in to assist, and it's complementary. So we always say that, these technologies, PEMF technology, red light technology, it's all complementary to what you're doing. So it's all part of the toolbox. So it's not the silver bullet. We still encourage that you should be eating correctly, making sure that you've got a good balanced diet, whatever that may be. And you're prioritizing your circadian rhythm. So in terms of the PEMF technology, how that helps is we're running the beta frequencies in the morning. So, the device that I designed specifically, we took a lot of the confusion out of PEMF because people want to know a certain frequency for a certain condition. That's another question we ask quite a lot is, right, I've got PEMF device.
I asked you that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have joint pain. And, through menopause, this is a normal symptom. I'm like, Andy, I've got some tendinopathy in my shoulder and I've got some joint pain in my knee. Like, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly that. So a lot of devices, you can choose the frequency. So you can choose between 1 and 100 hertz. And you have that option on our Accelerate device. But we want to take the confusion out because there are studies that show good results, say for your knee, and you want to rebuild cartilage in your knee, and they used 25 hertz for a certain amount of time. They used it a certain amount of times a day, and there was a positive result. So what people then assume is they need to replicate that study. They need to do the exact same thing, but it's not necessarily the case. So as long as you are applying PEMFs to that area, you're going to increase the circulation, you're going to reduce the inflammation in that area, and you're going to create an environment to heal. So you don't necessarily have to replicate that study. You can just do it. My preference is to prioritize your circadian rhythm again. So you apply PEMF, but you do it at the right frequency at the right time of day, because you don't want to be going to bed, putting a PEMF device on a higher frequency, because that may even have the reverse effect on your sleep. So.
And you have a a meditation setting
Yeah.
as well. And I've been petrified to go the meditation setting, because I was like, you say that I mean, for anybody who does meditate, it can put you into a much higher state.
Mhm.
What brain state is that?
That's the theta.
That's the theta state.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'll give it a go now that
Yeah.
I'm actually adding meditation into my routine. So can I just go back a bit? Because I really want you to talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old on this. So we've set up that there's these magnetic fields that, in nature, in Earth, but they're around our body. Now, what do they do? Now, how are they impacting? What are they doing inside of our body?
Inside the body. So what we can actually show people is we can show them on a dark field microscope. So I bought one because I love toys and tech, and and obviously we need to prove that our device is doing what it says on the tin. And what you can show with the PEMF device, especially a low intensity, because low intensity devices you can't necessarily feel. So it's a very passive therapy, which means you can sit on a device, you can turn it on, and it feels like nothing's happening. Some people are quite sensitive to them, they can feel the frequencies, but others, most people just don't feel it. So you kind of want to know what's happening. You take a finger prick before using PEMF, you put it onto a dark field scope, and you can see the blood cells. And what you tend to see with chronically ill people, or people that are tired one day, or sick in some way, or just not regulating their body properly, is they get quite sticky blood. And it's called the rouleau effect. So you'll see to give you a visualization, it looks like coins stacked together.
I think we have an example of it. We have an image of it.
There we go.
So for anybody who is only listening to this, it looks like, when you have magnets on and then all of a sudden the magnets join up together and create this connection. That's what these blood cells look like.
It.
And like you said, sticky.
Sticky. So you got the magnets at school, you have the north and south, and you put them all around the right way, they all stick together.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of same effect. So what then happens then if you apply the PEMF to the body, it's why we always say it works on a cellular level, because it rebalances and recharges the cells. What that means is you get the same amount of positive and negative electrons across the cell, rather than all on one side or an unbalanced cell. What that then does is, if you can imagine, if you start twisting those bar magnets around the other way, they repel each other. So the cells start to naturally repel each other. And I think you've got an image of...
So we have an after picture. So this is before PEMF therapy. We have the sticky blood. And this is after. So after what? Like, was this 10 minutes of PEMF therapy?
So this was 10 minutes on the Celerate mat. So this was after 10 minutes of using PEMF. And that's the effect that you have on the blood. So the blood cells suddenly then are a lot more separated, and they can travel around the body a lot easier. So
this is a good thing.
Yes.
Because that was going to be my question. Why is sticky blood bad? Why is this better? But what you can see, these look more like relaxed and, well, I don't know, they just look happier, actually. For anybody, again, who's listening, all the cells have kind of loosened up.
Exactly. And their charge has changed. So even on a dark field microscope, you can see live blood analysis too. So I might even be able to get some of those for you too, which are the videos that show how the blood moves when it's in those different states. So when they're all stacked together, moving around slowly, it's like they're really sluggish. They're really trying to get past each other. There's not a lot going on. You get into this state, and the cells are recharged, they're separated, they're rebelling each other, and you can almost see them like bouncing around the screen.
What I'm hearing you say is that our cells have like an electrical charge in them. And I guess when they're damaged, or when they're inflamed, like when you're not well, or when you're fatigued, they can't function properly. And when they're sticky, they can't function. They're not optimized. They can't flow through your body as well. They can't, again, mostly when you're unwell, all your cells will go to that area to try to make it better, but they can't function as well. So does the pulsed electromagnetic field, when you sit on the mat or when you have the device, does it recharge the cell? Is that what it does? Is it kind of like recharging your batteries? It recharges
so there's
the
a few things. And, just looking at these images, the first thing is oxygen distribution, because if you've got a bigger surface area now on each cell, you're able to carry more oxygen around the body. So that's one of the biggest thing. Lack of oxygen in the body is a lot of the cause for illness. But also it's about recharging those cells, like you said. So a good anecdote that I like to tell people is that our mobile phones now have those wireless chargers. So, and that's induction. You don't have to plug it in anymore. You put it on one of those pads, and there's an energy exchange between that charger and the battery within the cell. That's very similar with our bodies, and that's what's happening with PEMF. We don't have to plug ourselves in. We're laying on a mat. We've got an energy exchange within our body. And what it's doing is it's charging the ATP in the body. So
I
ATP
love this picture, by the way. That is a great analogy of the phone resting on the charger and then us resting on the mat. Okay, this is great. I'm totally tracking. Okay, ATP. Yes. What is it? Why is this good? Why do we need it?
So adenosine 5-phosphate, I really struggle to say that, but ATP is another thing that people are kind of waking up to now. And ATP is the currency exchange within the body. So that is our internal batteries. So inside,
and is ATP in a cell?
Yeah. So inside your cells, you've got your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are your batteries. So you may have multiple of those little body batteries in each cell. So we talk about billions of cells. We talk about billions of these tiny little body batteries. The only thing that can get in there and recharge it, a lot of the time is either sleep, rest, getting your circadian rhythm. But PEMF is one of them things that is able to do it, as well as red light. Red light's really good for also charging that ATP, but also not only charging the ATP, because you don't want to just charge the batteries and have recharged batteries. You need to use that too. So something you can see on the cell surface, if you get an even more expensive microscope, is you can see the cell membranes and the cell channels. And PEMF helps to open those out. So what that does is it allows nutrients into those cells and it allows waste materials out the cells. So it's also making those cells more effectively used within the body, as well as helping them charge.
So it's kind of good in, but also gets waste out of the cells.
Exactly. So detoxing. First few times that people use PEMF, we always say to them, drink lots of water that day, because a lot of the time your body has a natural detox. So the effects of PEMF is another thing that they tend to last on average around 8 hours.
Like a charge. If you're on a mat and you get charged, like your phone, it lasts
exactly
about 8
like
hours.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're going out at night, or if you have, something that you need to do, can you kind of lie on a mat and get a little bit of a charge before you go out? Am I simplifying it too much?
Yeah, no, exactly. And actually, normally when you get to the evening, we would say use an evening setting, a lower frequency. One's in the alpha range, or the theta range, the meditative range, because that's going to help you prepare for sleep. But like you say, if you're going out clubbing that night or something, or you've got a late night podcast or something, then by all means you can put it back onto like a higher frequency to kind of give you that little bit of a kick without having to kind of reach for coffee or caffeine.
Yeah, and you could do this with your clothes on as well. It goes through clothes.
Yeah.
And is it similar? Like, is there anything you can do that naturally recharges it? Like, if you go out for a 20-minute run, does that naturally charge your ATP or make your blood your cells less sticky as well? Are there natural ways to do it?
Yeah, exactly. So, we say natural, but the effects of PEMF and red light are natural. I'll come to that. But there are other ways to have the same effects on your blood. If at 4 o'clock that day, I got out my desk and went for a 20-minute walk or 20-minute run, you would see a similar effect in your blood start to separate, because you're giving it what it needs,
and we know the earth has a magnetic field, and we know,
exactly.
Being outside. So we know there is some natural
benefits to it. Gary Brecker talks about magnetism, light, and oxygen as these 3 kind of pillars of health. And you don't have to buy into this tech. You don't have to have this tech if we were living ancestrally. So, if we were back outside living the way we should live, feet on the grass all the time, eating right, eating clean, getting our sunlight as and when. And, when the sun goes down, it gets dark. That's what's supposed to happen. But it doesn't happen in our homes. What we're trying to do here is bring tech in to assist, almost bringing the ancestral lifestyle back to the body. So, we apply red light first thing in the morning, or we do it, my general rule is never to use red light therapy when the sun's gone down, because again, you're kind of messing up your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
PEMF you can use anytime, and you can use it throughout the night, because as long as you've got the right frequency running, you're just applying a magnetic field and it's going to help.
So this is tech for good.
Yes.
It's tech for good.
Yeah.
So you kindly have let me try it, and we have an example of the mat here. This is like a travel mat. I guess like you could put it in a chair. You can still lie on it. I promised myself that I would start a new habit every quarter this year. And so the first quarter was sleep, and talk about circadian rhythm. So going to bed and waking up at the same time. And I have to be honest, for anybody who's trying to do this, it did take me 3 months. Like it was like probably just before 3 months where I was finally waking up without an alarm. And then I was like, well, now what am I going to do with all this extra time I have in the morning? So I've been trying the mat, and now I sit on the mat, and we're going to get to red light in a minute. But my new habit for this quarter is, so I'm now adding meditation into my morning routine. So I sit on the mat, and then I do have the red light, and then I have a guided meditation happening. So I'm stacking.
Yeah.
I'm stacking my therapies. But Andy, I want to understand how can PEMF be a game changer for women during the menopause transition? So we're going to get to the money questions now. So flash quiz.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a symptom, and you tell me how PEMF can support women. I'm going to ask about bone health, because this to me is like a quiet crisis in menopause. And we all know that as estrogen drops, bone loss can increase drastically for women. And I'm asking you about this because there is extensive research and clinical trials of the positive impact of PEMF in not only, maintaining healthy bones, but in bone regeneration. Because I think there's a lot of the medication women get for osteoporosis slows down bone loss, but it actually doesn't restore bone density. But there are some studies showing that PEMF can help with this.
Yeah.
So bone health, go.
Okay. So bone health is and osteoporosis is probably, 7 out of 10 reason why customers come to us. And it always has been for PEMF, because as I say, NASA kind of started the studies looking at bone health, and they found that PEMF was the solution. One of the reasons being is that it can pass through the body. So it goes through bones, and it can help and treat bones. The FDA regulated it for non-union fractures. So a non-union fracture, for anybody who doesn't know, is a bone that breaks and it doesn't heal, or it doesn't heal in the expected time frame. You then apply PEMF to it, and you apply it either localized or as a full body, and suddenly that bone will heal. And that all comes down to a number of different factors. So again, it's increasing the circulation in the area, it's helping reduce the inflammation, and it helps the actual bones to regenerate. So PEMF is one of them things that can actually, like you say, help with regeneration of bone. And things like cartilage. Cartilage is another one that happens when you get arthritis, lack of cartilage regrowth, and PEMF can help with that. So what we're doing again is create an environment in that body to heal. So your body's doing the work. It's what I always say to people. It's not actually the PEMF device that's fixing you. It's your body, but you're able to give it the tools it needs to create that fixing. And, when NASA's doing studies on osteoporosis and bone health because of astronauts, these astronauts that have just come down from space recently, they were up there for way longer than they were supposed to be. And, I hope they're not listening, but they look like 10 years older than when they first went up there. You can see it. They have aged dramatically because of the fact that they've been away from that magnetic field. And bone health is a big one. And like you say, because of postmenopausal women are a lot more susceptible to osteoporosis, it's one that the door comes knocking quite a lot for. And I want to make it kind of clear, especially for people that come to us with osteoporosis, is that it's not an overnight fix. If you want to restore bone, it's going to take some commitment, and obviously it's a complementary passive therapy, as I mentioned before. So there's no risks involved with PMF therapy. So it kind of doesn't rule out anybody other than pacemakers, which we can come on to. But there's kind of no reason not to implement it into your daily routine. That's what I say to people. If you are on medication for osteoporosis, if you've started a new diet, which is going to, prioritize your health, your bone health, there's no reason why you shouldn't then put in a PEMF device, which is going to help with the absorption of minerals, and it's going to help over time with bone health. There was a really good study that they did with PEMF and postmenopausal women for bone health, and they actually showed some regenerative measures, and they did that through I think it's called a DEXA scan. So they actually look at the thickness of the bone, so they can actually see that on a scan, and they've seen that over time. And when I say time, as I kind of mentioned, you want to be using a PEMF device for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. This is a long time commitment, but it's 20 minutes a day, or as you've been saying, you've been sleeping on the mat and things like that. So you can, as long as you've got a device that fits into your routine, then, that's what you need.
And it sounds like, you can't recover a lot of bone health once it's gone. It is really difficult and would take a long time. But so it sounds like this would be really helpful more from a preventative perspective. We talk about, bone health, even related, like when we talk about strength training, even, and we say if you can start younger and build up your bone health, muscle mass, et cetera, then it'll set you up to have a more positive menopause experience. Okay, what about sleep?
PEMF therapy particularly is very good for sleep because, as I say, as long as you've got it on the right frequency, you can run it in the delta frequencies, which is delta frequency is your deep sleep. So if you've got a tracker, if you've got I can see you've got the ring on.
Yes, my Aura ring.
Yeah. So if you've got sleep trackers, that sort of thing, one of the first things we get people to report back to us is sleep. Because, as I say, PMF therapy is something that kind of, especially if it's a chronic illness, it's going to take about a month before you're going to notice a difference. Sleep is immediate. So if you've had a PEMF session that day, we tend to say to people, give me a text, tell me how you feel tomorrow. And they'll say, oh, I slept like I've never slept before. Because you're regulating your body into the right frequencies.
What about anxiety? Can PEMF help with anxiety? We tend to, with the hormonal changes, get a bit more anxious, which can affect women at work even, and affect their confidence sometimes. You might be a bit more reactive at home or with, people closest to you.
Yeah, so that's where it's going to support your endocrine system. So really, again, it kind of comes back to what we're saying is that if you've had a great night's sleep that night, you're going to wake up a lot less anxious. You're going to be a lot more rested. You're going to be able to tackle that day. And, things like anxiety, another, term that's been coined now from drinking alcohol, and the next day you have anxiety. And again, that comes
anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is where, you've drank alcohol the day before and you have a heightened state of anxiety, and people call it anxiety.
I'm going to remember that.
Yeah, it's your, it's where you've slept so badly because and that's one thing, I had a Whoop band. I don't wear it anymore at the moment because of the Bluetooth, and it's a different story. But I really, what they give you is the information. And I saw through my Whoop band what alcohol did to my sleep. And when you wake up and your body battery's on like 20% and you got to go through the whole day, that's when anxiety can really peak. So again, it's all about making sure you're giving your body the right environment. You're giving it sleep. You're giving it the right frequencies.
Yeah, I feel like what you're saying here basically is, so I've heard PEMF therapy can be referred to as wind in trees therapy, because you don't feel it. You know, how can you track its effects? We've seen the blood, but it does profoundly impact us on a cellular level. And I love energy. I'm always about the energy.
Yeah.
And I think people can relate to energy, right? When your energy's down, like low, high energy, etc. But I think what we're talking about here is PEMF therapy on a mat or the device. It's almost like it's not a 2 for 1, a 3 for 1. It's like a 6 for 1 because sometimes you have a heart issue, you'll go to the heart doctor or then you have anxiety and then you're going to go to the psychiatrist and then you've got this issue, you're going to go somewhere else. It seems that as a complementary therapy, lying on the mat or having the device is treating the whole body. It's
Hmm.
more of a holistic approach. Like you said, it recharges your cells,
Hmm.
gives them a bit of a clean so that your body can operate at its best.
Yeah.
And when it's operating at its best, you will sleep better, you will have less anxiety. The cells can travel to the parts of the body that need attention, joint pain, illness, brain function, so that you can operate at 100%.
Yeah. And that's it. So increasing the circulation to the brain is a big one when it comes to brain fog, brain function, that sort of thing. So if you can increase the circulation throughout the whole body. So one of my main points that I always point people down if they're looking for a PMF device is start with the full body system, because there are a lot of localized devices. Our device can be used as a localized device, but you can plug a full body mat into it. And I recommend people always, as a standard, goes for the full body option because of the effects it's going to have on the whole body and not just trying to treat your knee arthritis, if that makes sense, because you're going to get some benefits there, but why not apply it to the whole body? But it might be a good point to also talk about the different types of intensity with PMF devices, because we've mentioned that you don't feel PMF. And someone might be listening to this going like, well, I went to my clinic and they put me on a PEMF device and it kicked me off the seat. So there's two different categories of PMF device, and there's low intensity or low to medium intensity, which we would categorize our device. And that's the one which is very passive therapy that happens kind of in the background. We've measured our magnetic field from our device and it still goes out about 2 meters. So you still get a good magnetic field, although you can't feel it. High intensity devices, we're talking about, so you measure magnetic field with Gauss. And if you are looking at a device that's over 4,000 Gauss, this is classed as a high intensity device. And this is where it actually feels, the best way I can describe it is those machines that used to go onto your abs to tone your abs. And they actually do use high intensity for toning like butts and abs and things. It's another application. So you kind of, it gives you that crunch every time it goes off. It responds to the muscles and you can feel it. It's almost like someone kicking you in a kind of pleasant way. It's like a massage. So you've got these high intensity devices, and you tend to find them more at professional settings and in sports centers where you're going to be utilizing the PMF device less frequently. So if you only have access to a PEMF device maybe once a week, then you probably want to go for a higher intensity device, because that's going to give you kind of more of that energy in a shorter space of time, and like a TENS machine. So probably a lot of people that have been through pregnancy will have been exposed to a TENS machine at some point, and it's almost like that feeling, like a tingly kind of pulsating feeling. And so those are your kind of differences between your high intensity and low intensity, and where you kind of feel the different therapies, if that makes sense.
And this is great because if anybody wanted to add PEMF therapy into their wellness routine, because I think there's a lot of women out there who, especially during perimenopause, they just know they're off. They know they're not operating at 100%. They'll have a good day, but they'll have a bad day. And usually that's the line is like, I just don't feel like myself. And it sounds like this could be an interesting, therapy to add into their wellness routine to help recharge their batteries.
Yeah, exactly. And when people are looking for a PEMF device, you tend to get the higher intensity device more expensive. It's just because the way to build them, the more copper, the more energy it needs, they tend to be much more expensive devices. So when people are buying wellness tech, and if they've got the money to spend, they kind of just go for the most expensive system. But when it comes to PMF, you don't really need those high intensities at home as frequently. If you're going to buy a device to use at home and you're going to use it on a more frequent basis, you only really need to use a low intensity and a full body system. That's what I would say. So find a good PMF device that gives you low to medium intensities that you can use on a daily basis, and you don't necessarily have to spend 30,000-40,000 pounds on one of these super high kind of intensity devices. The message here is that not to just think that we have to go for the most expensive tech to get the best tech. When it comes to PMF, you kind of want to look at your low versus your high. The market is getting a little bit saturated at the moment because, like I say, Gary Brecker started talking about PEMF, so it's becoming more of a well-known. It's in there now. Red light is obviously more well-known. PEMF is very close behind now, and what we're seeing is the market is getting a little bit flooded by these cheap multi-therapy, multi-produced systems that aren't great. And what they have is they're giving PEMF, but there's a few key differences. So with a good PEMF device, if people are looking for devices, you want to find one with multiple coils in it. So the reason I say that is the further you move away from a coil in a mat, the more magnetic field you lose. So you want to find a device that has multiple coils spread out across the entire mat, so you're getting a good coverage of the PEMF. What a lot of these cheaper products are doing now that include PEMF is they're putting 1 or 2 coils, or 4, sometimes 5, 6, and they would just stick them in one area of the mat, and they say, right, we've got PEMF now. So, and they produce, they advertise all the same benefits of PEMF on their, on their websites. And you're not really getting the full picture. You're not really getting the full treatment. You want to have a good spread of a magnetic field. You don't want to just have one coil in those systems. If you're looking for devices and they offer multiple different modalities at the moment, I haven't really seen any good systems on the market that do that. My advice is to look for a PEMF only device and a red light only device, because that company specialized in red light, or they specialized in PEMF.
Yeah. So do your research, look into it. But I like your tip around looking for the most amount of copper wiring throughout the mat. I also like the device because, listen, for most women listening, I mean, even to find 10 minutes for a sheet mask is asking too much sometimes. So I like the controller because you can just put that on and go about your day. I think I had it on my shoulder the other day, and then I just put my coat on over top and I went to the grocery store. So when you can build it into your day, then it's also really helpful. I want to move on to red light therapy. It's having a moment in wellness as well. And it's also getting attention for menopause management. So everybody listening, we will have known red light therapy for all these red light masks. I mean, I think it was on everybody's Christmas list a few years ago. I know it was on mine, but now it's being talked about in terms of menopause. And I think, this is more than just beauty. This is biology now, so like buckle up, everybody, and, listen up, because red light therapy is not just about collagen production. It has so many other benefits. So can you talk us through, red light therapy and how it works?
Yeah. So the first thing that people think when you talk about red light is it's going to make my skin great. It's going to increase collagen. It's going to increase the elastin, less lines of wrinkles, all that sort of thing, which it does. And it does it, to a good degree. And the reason it does that and that sun has the opposite effect is because red light therapy is taking the wavelengths that are good for those things. And you remove the UVA and UVB from those wavelengths. And the UVA and UVB are the ones that cause the damage of the aging. They also get a negative connotation, but a good level of UAV and UAB during the day is still good. It's still. But the problem is when people sit out on it all day, every day. That's when the problems become. So, but what we're finding now, obviously, where these devices have started to flood the mainstream in these masks and all these sorts of things, is that people are now seeing benefits through other factors, because you've got red light and there's also near infrared. And the differences between those, because most red light devices kind of just focus on the red light. And this, again, when you're looking for a red light device, you want to look at the wavelengths and what wavelengths they offer. If they only offer wavelengths in the red light, that's going to give you the good skin complexion, the collagen, all that sort of thing. Near infrared is a bit deeper penetration. And this is where we're talking about with PEMF, where it travels through the body. Near infrared has the ability to penetrate through the skin. So you get a deeper level. And the near infrared have been researched more for recovery, ATP, these sorts of things. So now the red light devices are evolving slightly, and they're starting to include red light and near infrared into their LEDs so that you get the benefits of those. You'll also get blue light. So again, where people have started to think blue light's bad, blue light's not bad, but as long as you're applying it at the right time of day. So our systems include both red, near infrared, and blue light. So you get a full light spectrum.
And the benefit of red light, near infrared, and blue light, well, near infrared, I guess, again, it is, am I right to believe that it also is creating environment in your body for collagen production, for, it's just, again, creating an environment for your body to do what it knows how to do. Yeah,
it's just helping the body to produce what it needs to. And, same sort of thing again, if we can expose ourselves to these lights at the right time of day, then when we get into the evening and hopefully all the lights on your house are off and all that sort of thing, then you're going to start producing that melatonin. You're going to start producing collagen in the morning, and when you're applying these therapies at the right time. So it's all about creating that environment in the body to heal, to give it the tools it needs to do all these different things and to perform throughout the day. So if you can increase the collagen, you're going to get better skin elasticity, you're going to get less lines, wrinkles, and you're going to get a different color complexion, but just not the tan. That makes sense.
You again have kindly sent me, like you said, this, what do you call this package? The office
This
biohacker.
is our office biohacker package, yeah.
So there is a little mini red light, like a face size one that you're letting me try. My girlfriends were very excited when I told them that I have a medical grade red light, red light at my home. They all want to come over every morning and have a blast on it. But again, this is something that's been researched for decades. This isn't new. There's thousands of peer-reviewed studies on it for so many different health applications with red light therapy. So we've talked about collagen and skin health, like you said. I think it also helps with mood and brain function as well.
Yeah, again, if you can navigate your circadian rhythm, you're gonna be a lot more in the right mood, the right brain function throughout the day.
And like you said, it's part of your waking up in the morning. Yeah. It does help with energy.
Getting a routine in as well. If we wake up and we're tired and we're groggy, it's going to set us off on a bad step that day. So putting those two therapies together, again, it's very much like going outside in the morning, exposing yourself to morning light, exposing yourself to the ground, the Earth's natural magnetic field. It's going to help with the cells. It's going to do everything it needs to do to just regulate your system and complement everything else you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, some people listening might go, well, then why don't I just go outside for 10 minutes? But
it just doesn't happen.
We're just not doing it. I mean, we don't all live near the ocean or, I don't know. I walk outside and there's like more buildings in front of me, or I go out in my garden and there's a back wall and somebody else's garden on the other side. It doesn't. So, a lot of these therapies are created so that we can, like I think you said at the beginning of the program, is create these environments that you can do this in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, just as well to suit our different lifestyles or the different ways that we're living.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now.
I live in more of the countryside, Garden of England, they call it, Ken. And I have the ability, if I wanted to get out in the morning and go and do that grounding and go and see the morning light. But I live in the UK. It's just, we're just coming into spring, which is great. We're just starting to feel the warmth and all this sort of thing. But, in -2 degrees Celsius, I'm just not going to get out, roll out of bed. It's hard enough to get out of bed, let alone go and stand in the garden with me with no shoes on.
Yes, yes. And when it's cold, yeah, exactly. And your bare feet and go outside and look at the horizon and look at the sun at a certain time of day. And like I was saying, I think for most women, even they're like they just don't have time. I had one of those red light masks, which I asked for Christmas a few years ago, and I think a lot of people listening will go, "Okay, how is this different than some of those?" Handheld lasers or the red light masks that are on the market, they go for a range of prices as well. This is obviously this desktop version. And what I understand is the more lights, the better.
Mhm.
And wavelengths are
Yeah.
important. So like what should women be looking for in red light therapy from well, I guess again, for more than just a face mask, if they're looking for all these other benefits as well in terms of mood and sleep quality and whatnot.
Yeah, because that's half the problem. We know the benefits of PEMF, we know the benefits of red light, but how do we find one that's actually going to do what it says it's going to do? And how do we navigate that minefield? Because it is a minefield, especially in the red light market, because it's very saturated now. And breaking it down to the kind of easiest ways I can explain and the kind of key things to look for. One of the things is the application. So what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve overall body wellness? Do you just want to have a healthy looking glow on your face? Do you just want to reduce the wrinkles on your eyes, that sort of thing? So the size of the device, size matters in this case. So the size of the device is
size matters.
Size
everybody.
matters in this case. Yes, you're right. The common one. So the easiest way to explain this is what you're trying to treat, you need to get a device the same size. So there is a lot of kind of trickery going on in the market with people having a very small panel. This is our desktop version, and we only advertise this for using on your face. You can use it on other areas of your body, obviously you can, but you can only treat the size of the device. So some people will call this a half body device, this size panel. And what they tell you to do is stand further back from it and you'll get a red glow over half your body. It doesn't work like that. The main intensity of these red lights is within the same size of the product. So, and the further you move away, the weaker it becomes. So if you're buying a device that's quite small and it's called a half body, or even some of these, some of these companies have done like a 1 meter panel and they call it a full body. Again, it's not. The best place to get the treatment is within about 6 inches to about 18 inches maximum from the device. So if you think you've got to be relatively close to the device to get the best benefit, then you want something that's going to treat, so if you want a full body treatment, you have to go for a full body treatment device and look at the size of the product, make sure it covers your entire body or most of it.
And I think this is interesting because this isn't just about glow.
Mm-hmm.
It's about energy. It's about healing from the inside out. While most people listening will be familiar with the masks, we're also talking about here, like you said, full body, half body, so that our body can heal from the inside, or our body can, we can create an environment for our body to do what it does best. So anybody who is suffering from, other perimenopause or menopausal symptoms, you might want to look at something full body. If you are looking, usually in perimenopause, most of the women see the aesthetic things change first. That was why I went to a doctor first. I was like, how can I stop my face from melting? So that's what we see first. And I guess it's also different, the things that sit on your skin versus the desktop, which like you said, you say 6 to 18. So I guess the power of something that's sitting on your skin isn't as strong as what a desktop may have.
So the different applications as well. So if you have a mask, a red light mask, and you think that you're now getting red light therapy, you're probably not. The ones that touch your skin have to be very low level. And the reason being is because red light therapy can create high EMFs. Any kind of
And those are the
lights.
electromagnetic fields.
They're your electromagnetic fields, which are your high-end ones, which are not the best ones to have.
Yeah.
Red light therapy can create that if it's close to the skin. So to get rid of that risk, the masks have to be quite low power.
Yeah.
And the low power ones will be good for skin, but not necessarily have the deep penetration that you need for near infrared and those sorts of things. So you might get slightly better complexion, but you're not going to get the real true benefits that you would with a higher intensity red light.
Yeah. And I think, again, what I want everybody listening to know is that this is, what we're talking to Andy about today is deeper healing. And I just keep saying it over and over again, is how red light therapy and PEMF therapy helps you create an environment for your body to do what it does best. And what that means is it creates an environment where your cells, less sticky cells, which means they can perform better in your body and help you heal, whether it's better brain function or it's chronic illness. This is what we're talking about today, not just the aesthetic benefits of a red light mask, for
example.
And that's
it, because, and it's me trying to educate people on the fact that there's so much more to these red lights than just a bit of skin health.
Which is why I wanted you here today, because I think we all know about red light therapy, but the idea of using it as a tool to help us during the menopause transition. And what I love about it and the idea about it was, listen, we met at a wellness summit, but I reached out to you to be on the show because you were also featured in a new documentary that's coming out called She Healed, From Conception to Postmenopause, which is supposed to be an amazing documentary on women's health, which I think it features or it breaks whatever this summer.
They're planning on it this summer, but I think it will probably be pushed back a bit.
Yeah. So, okay. As these things are, but you were featured as a wellness pioneer. And that's when I reached out to you because, I'm looking at ways and I want to educate women and help share information on ways that they can, be proactive in their overall well-being so they can have a more positive menopause experience. And this goes beyond just a red light on your mask and a few wrinkles. And that's why I thought this was interesting. I mean, what was that experience like on She Healed? What were you talking about there?
Yes, I mean, one of the reasons why we were invited on there was because of our Cellular, our kind of signature PEMF device. And one of the unique features of that is that it's completely battery operated. And like you mentioned, you can kind of put it on your shoulder and you can use it on the go and go about your everyday life. The good thing about our device is that you can put it around the reproductive organs, all that sort of thing. So some people buy our device for menstrual cycle, for all these different things, for pain, dysmenorrhea, and, so we get a lot of customers in that field, and particularly our products because it's very well applicable to that area and it's easier to apply it and just to go about your everyday life.
Now, Andy, the final question we ask all of our guests. First of all, I do want to highlight that you are the first man to be featured on Menopausitive.
I know, which you told me just before we came on this, so no pressure or anything.
Oh, amazing. We're going to have to take a picture of this to mark the moment. Anyway, Andy, the final question we ask all of our guests. Knowing what we know now about PEMF and red light therapy as it relates to the menopause transition, what would you tell our 35-year-old listener?
So one of the biggest feedback we get a lot is, I wish I'd found this earlier. And it's a refreshing but also kind of disappointing bit of feedback that we get because, people always leave it too late. I was the same. I had a health condition which you mentioned on the intro, and I found PEMF because of that health I was in a healing crisis. I was taking all these different antibiotics. Nothing was working. I was just going down and down and down and down until I found PEMF, which just gave me that little bit extra I needed with everything else to get me back into a healing state. And to the 35-year-olds, it's just don't leave it too late to do these things.
It's a conversation we have a lot on this sofa because a lot of women wait until they feel awful before they even go speak to a doctor about menopause. So this is another tool they can use as part of prevention or preparing their body for a more positive experience. What would you tell our 45-year-old listener?
45-year-old listeners, if you are in the perimenopause and you are in menopause stage by now, then utilize this tech. This is your time. If you haven't used it as preventative maintenance, this is your time now to look at this sort of technology and start integrating it into your routine.
And there's so many different symptoms for perimenopause and menopause that what I like about the PEMF and Red Light is that it, again, prepares, puts your body in a state to deal with all of it.
Yeah, that's it. So we're not taking a tablet specific for that
one symptom,
condition.
One symptom, exactly. But it probably works nicely alongside a number of other things. And what would you tell our 55-year-old listener?
It's never too late to integrate this tech. We have 90-year-olds contacting us and saying, we've got all these problems. And the first thing is, don't give up. It's not, the medical industry seems to give up on people a lot of the time. It's just, that's what happens when you get old. I hate that thing. I hate when people say that. It's not, you don't have to let that happen when you get old,
Now, Andy, if people were interested in learning more about this, how could they find you?
Me specifically, I'm probably more active on Instagram. It's AndySmith_PEMF. The company that I'm running is called NewMed, and that is the one that specializes in PEMF devices and education around PEMF device. And Cellular is the brand that we've launched, which is our own PEMF and Red Light devices. So if you're looking to buy tech, then Cellular is probably where you want to start.
We're going to put all of this in the show notes so people can find you. But thank you so much for sharing this with us so we can understand all these different ways that we can, stimulate our body's own natural healing. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You may have noticed more and more so-called new therapies appearing in well-being spaces. Infrared saunas, cold immersion, PEMF, red light therapy. Even acupuncture and breathwork have gone mainstream, and for good reason. But here's the thing. Many of these quote-unquote new practices aren't new at all. PEMF has been used therapeutically since the Second World War. Long before that, ancient Eastern medicine used magnets on acupuncture points to help move energy. Red light therapy, discovered in the 60s, and since then studied for everything from cellular repair to its potential medicinal use in space travel. So while the packaging may be modern, the roots run deep. PEMF therapy and red light therapy, these aren't magic pills. They're complementary therapies, science-backed, subtle, but so powerful. Used by high-performance athletes, functional doctors, and increasingly discerning women like you and me who want to feel grounded, focused, and energized. Because remember, this chapter, it's not about managing decline. It's about regenerating powerfully, gracefully, and beautifully. See you next time. Andy, thank you so much. There's so much information there. I mean, I literally, it took me days, to go through it.
Minefield.
I bake for all of my guests.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a new recipe for you today. These are mocha power bars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of coffee in it, some dark chocolate, coconut, oats, gluten-free oats, maple syrup, some almond butter.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to give them a try?
Of course.
You are the first to try them. Let's see.
Okay. Give them the taste test.
Yeah. I thought, these are good biohacker snacks.
Mm.
What do you think?
They're good.
Yeah?
I'm a fan of coffee as well, so.
This could be your energy stack for your ride home.
100%.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for being The first man on your podcast too.
Oh, and by the way, I knew you were menopausitive when you downloaded this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love bringing this information to you, and I love that you're taking control of your health. You can follow Menopausitive on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. Join me next week as we discover more ways to optimize our bodies. Because together, we're going to redefine menopause.
I got a good feeling.